Hello and welcome to Rising from the Ashes. I'm April Gallagher. I'm an energetic clutter clearer and a fierce champion of humanity's awakening and ushering in this new paradigm. I am here today with my great pal, Anna Klint, who is actually the host of Rising from the Ashes. Anna is a transformational coach, a healer, and an artist, and is passionate about personal liberation as a catalyst for creating a new earth. So welcome everybody, and we're excited to have you here to play with us for this next little bit. And Anna, my question for you to start things off is
Yes.
one word, 2020.
My word for 2020 is shift storm, of course, like a total play on shitstorm, which 2020 was something of a shitstorm. But the idea about shift storm is that we have an opportunity there to create a shift. And so I love that little play on words and that little spin. Of course, shifting is quite challenging, can be challenging for us creatures of habit. And so we saw a lot of challenges around shifting this year, but every time it got a little bit chaotic or just if I would get down or get discouraged about the year, I would remember, oh yeah, it's a shift storm. Like we get it. This is an opportunity built into this.
That's awesome. So my question is, if it's shifting, it sounds like we're shifting from something into something new.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
What are we being asked to shift into, or what are we asking to become? What is this shift about?
Yeah, totally. So many of the experts that I asked this question to said we're being asked to become more compassionate. We're being asked to be more in tune with who we are, or more in tune with the natural world around us. We're being asked to become our real, authentic selves. And I absolutely couldn't agree with them more, that now more than ever, we can see like how important compassion is. And that's compassion for each other, compassion for our situation. And really, it's all about compassion for ourselves and how we show up for ourselves. And that's one thing that really came through so clearly for me this year, is like we are being asked to up level to a new level of humanity. We're being asked to become new humans in a way. And there's an inherent struggle there, because we don't like change.
And I like change.
Okay, you like change. I get that.
unless it has to do with the natural environment being
degraded.
Degraded.
Yeah.
But other than that, okay, carry on.
Very good. Next.
So compassionate, being more compassionate, becoming new humans. How do we do that? What is that? I mean, how does one bring in more compassion? How does one become a new human?
Yeah, again, so many of the experts on this series, you included, really talked about the power of choice, and like how fundamental that is to creating change in your life, is actually realizing, accepting, and embracing choice as a way forward. And so from my lens, my perspective, it's all about making that decision, asking yourself, like, am I ready to stop suffering? Am I ready to release my past? Am I ready to let go? Am I ready to let go of my need to be right? Am I ready to heal the trauma of my past so that I can evolve? And all of that is actually a choice. And so what I feel we're really being asked to become and to step into to do this work is to make that choice, which is a very simple choice, but not an easy choice to make. It's very straightforward, a very straightforward question. Am I ready to stop suffering? But then to actually lean into that discomfort of change, to actually lean into radical acceptance, which leads to radical, compassion for yourself and your situation, and really like diving into that. So many of us, almost every single human on the planet, has experienced some kind of trauma. And as we understand trauma more and more, we realize that we're inheriting the trauma responses of our ancestors based on what they've gone through. And then we have collective trauma. I mean, 2020 was collectively traumatic for everybody, wasn't it? I mean, come on. So it's really like owning that we feel pain from these past experiences, and welcoming and embracing the fact that we can evolve past it and grow past it. And we can't really, like, from my point of view, like, we cannot create the new earth at all until each one of us does that deep inner work that allows us to become our true authentic selves. And trauma is like a jacket that we've been wearing our whole life that, you know, is a lens, a layer of perception that we view everything through. And when we can resolve that, the truth of who we are has nothing else to do but shine through. And then this jacket that we've been wearing can kind of dissolve over time, or in one fell swoop, be gone. Who knows?
Well, what if I don't like the cold and I want to keep this jacket on? At what cost does keeping this jacket on have?
Okay, so we're talking about creating the new earth in this series, right? But the new earth is starting with us. So on the collective level, the cost it's pretty straightforward. I can paint a really vivid picture of it for you. It's basically a repeat of 2020.
Like Groundhog Day?
It's like Groundhog Day, again and again and again, until we get this lesson right. This is what's going to be presented for us, is pain and suffering, restriction of movement, financial crisis, instability, racial reckonings, overt racism and police brutality, like all of these things that we saw in 2020, the climate change. I mean, how many fires were there at one point in California that were burning simultaneously? Like 800 fires throughout the state, 1,000, something like that at one time in one state. This is what we are going to keep seeing if we do not do this work. Now that's at the collective level, right? And you could say, okay, well, collective level, yeah. So at the personal level, we're talking about the continuation of heartache. We're talking about an inability to feel satisfied and secure in the world. We're talking about competition instead of collaboration. We're talking about the ego running the show, driving the bus, and us being carried along as opposed to us like creating for ourselves real joy, real peace, real love, real connection, real fulfillment, grace, ease. And then from that place comes an end to those collective problems that we're talking about, because we become so fully resourced. Our capacity to change the world around us becomes practically limitless when we are in this space of our true authentic selves and living in alignment with who we're supposed to be. And we cannot do that until we do that deep inner work of releasing our past, letting go of the ego's rule over us. And really just like, that's what we get: joy, like we get love, we get play, we get puppies.
So it may be cold for a second, but then there's lots of good stuff on the other side, right?
Because the sun is shining down.
And you can feel the sun if you take the jacket off.
That's right. Totally.
And so it sounds like we have a lot to gain when we make that choice, when we do that work, when we're willing to make the choice to look at and reckon with the discomfort. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add about that? About what we get, or why it's worth it? I mean, I think you painted a pretty excellent picture of what it is we have to look forward to, what it is we have to pull us towards doing this inner work. Is there anything else you would want to?
Yeah, totally. When I talk about the new earth, everyone talks about it kind of, through their own lens. But for me, what I think of is the new earth is a place where all of us have our needs met, where we're living in a world that supports equality and justice and fairness, where we have eliminated scarcity, where we have a fundamental understanding that there is actually enough to go around. And for me, the new earth it's actually a heart space. It's actually a paradigm within which we live in our mind and our heart. And so when I talk about creating the new earth, and I talk about culture change, which is what we're talking about, like we like 2020 showed us, like, there's a lot of shit that's not working. It's not serving everybody. And some people are being served and a lot of people are not being served. And even the people who feel like they are being served are often being hurt by some of the systems that are in place. So this is really affecting everybody. And I'm very passionate about culture change. But when I talk about the new earth, it is actually something that lives inside of your heart. And it is actually something that makes your life, one, worth living, two, possible to live without deep emotional pain. So many people, and I'm going to speak more for women because that's mostly who I work with. And of course, I identify as a woman. And so this is my personal experience. But so many women are moving through the world with deep heartache, with a deep sense of not belonging, not feeling fulfilled, not reaching this imaginary yardstick that they have, that they're constantly comparing themselves to. And I want you, audience, to care about creating the new earth because it's the most selfish thing that you could possibly do, because we can't create it until you feel deep peace, deep joy, deep love, deep fulfillment, living in alignment with your soul's calling. That is what has to happen to create the new earth. And it makes your life so much better. That when we talk about like culture change, it's like, it can't start from a place of like us walking through the world, traumatized and wearing masks. Like, it comes from us walking through the world with curiosity and wonder and love and openness and seeing each other like, hello, my sister, my brother, my cousin, my mother, my father, whoever you are, like seeing you as part of me. Like, that's what has to happen. And when we do that, like, our life just feels really good, right? I think you can attest to this, April.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. There was one thing that you touched on early that caught my ear, that caught my attention, and that was scarcity. And this idea of moving out of scarcity. And I don't know, would you just expand a little bit more on scarcity,
Yeah.
and the energy of scarcity and what's available on the other side of
Yeah.
scarcity?
Absolutely. And I have a couple of guests that are going to speak really beautifully to this as well. But we are steeped, our culture here in the West, I can only speak to the West and America in particular, but our culture is steeped in scarcity. And in fact, many of our systems are functioning because we have, as a collective group of individuals, we have embraced scarcity as a model. And that model says that there are not enough resources to go around for everyone. But even if you can even break it down, it's like all marketing is based on scarcity. Well, I don't want to say all marketing. A lot of marketing is based on scarcity. Like this idea that you have to have the latest blah, blah, blah phone, the latest this thing, or else you won't be good enough. This is scarcity. And our whole everything is like this idea of scarcity is just driving, it's underpinning so much in our culture that we're so completely oblivious to on so many levels. And so we often think of scarcity when it comes to money and abundance. Like we think of abundance as being like the opposite of scarcity, but really the antidote to scarcity is simply embracing this idea of sufficiency, and which is that actually there really is enough to go around. And there's a lot, I'm not going to get into like a lot of details, but I read something some years back that there was enough food thrown away every year throughout the whole entire world, not just in America, although we're horrible at wasting food in America. But there was enough food produced every single year to feed every mouth on the planet. It was just a lack of ability to get the food where it needed to go. You know, it was lack of will or lack of resources, or I don't know what it was a lack of. But that there really actually is enough food produced all the time for everyone to not be hungry. And yet we have literally children starving to death. We have children starving in our own country. And so this idea of scarcity is so deeply ingrained within us. To get away from the money aspect of it, we often are going through life thinking that there isn't enough love to go around. If you're not in a relationship, you might be thinking all the good ones are taken, right? That's a scarcity consciousness, that somehow in this planet of billions and billions of people, like there's just no one for you, scarcity consciousness. I can only be happy if I get this thing, if I get this job, if I go on this trip, if I get this car, da da da. Scarcity. I can't have happiness unless I have this thing out there. It's all scarcity. And there is absolutely zero room in the new earth that we're creating for us to be living in scarcity consciousness. They don't go together at all. They can't work together. And so until we are able to look that in the eye and say, what is it about my programming that tells me I can't be loved until I do this thing, achieve this thing, be seen in this way? That's when I will deserve love. Or I can't love myself unless my partner loves me that way, unless my mother loves me that way, unless my dog loves me, whatever the thing is. Right. That's scarcity, and it doesn't work. We have to let that go. And that is a practice.
It sounds very conditional, right? Scarcity sounds like a very conditional mindset. If X, then Y, only if. And the new earth is about moving into unconditionality.
Yes, beautifully said, April. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Scarcity, when you were talking about that, and kind of talking about what's on the other side and unconditionality, we just touched on that. Kind of on the other side of that is this idea of VIP and being very important. So I saw somewhere in the literature that you and I have sent back and forth something about a rising from the ashes VIP. What is that?
Yes, absolutely. So there's the VIP upgrade for Rising from the Ashes. So, you know, the series is completely free and accessible to everybody. No scarcity at all. But
no scarcity.
You know, but as we do these things, like this is like we're creating a very sacred container with these. And so we are building in some scarcity in that it is a time limited event. And there are a lot of live events that are going to be happening. And it's going to be an incredible series that's going to unfold to really usher in a new year and a new paradigm. There's 24 pre-recorded interviews, which are absolutely incredible. Like I was just blown away again and again and again by the wisdom that was dropped by all of you guys, and you included, April. And those alone are life-changing. But in addition, we're going to have in the ballpark of a dozen or so live events that are rituals, ceremonies, meditations, energy activations, incantations, like all sorts of different live events that each one of you can participate in that are going to also be deeply sacred and transformative in themselves.
I got chills actually when you were going through the list of those things, like somewhere like after meditations or something, it was like,
yeah, it's going to be unbelievably juicy. I am so excited for it. And so with the VIP upgrade, what you get actually is lifetime access to all of this. So you'll have all the recordings, but you're going to have these dozen or so activations, meditations, ceremonies and rituals that you can then keep in your library and come back to again and again and again. So for instance, like a dark moon and new moon ceremony by Jane Hardwick Collings, it's going to be phenomenal. Like, and this is something you're going to want to use every single month, and you're going to have it when you do the VIP upgrade. Now, okay, the VIP upgrade is not just about you having like the lifetime access. But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. You act now.
Totally. You're also going to get the first, I think it's 18 people are going to get a free one-on-one call with me. It's the Fear to Freedom Breakthrough Call. And it is a super highly effective, high value use of your time to get very clear on the longing and calling of your heart, very clear on what the roadblocks are that are keeping you stuck and not able to live that authentic version of yourself. And then I make very specific, actionable recommendations that everyone can, that you can take, whoever does the call, to create that new life that, like get over your past so that you can create a life that you really love. And by the way, that's how you create the new earth. And so you get that, but wait, there's more. Then there's also going to be a 90-minute masterclass.
You want to like slash the price or something when you say that. It's like,
totally. Well, the price is slashed, right? So the early bird price is $47, and it's like a ridiculous deal. And then at some point it's going up to $97. Mm-hmm. But it gets even better than that, because in addition to all the great stuff that you personally get, you're also going to be supporting an unbelievably incredible nonprofit. Like half of all the profits are going to go to the Turtle Island Institute. And so I hope everybody will watch my conversation with Mulaney Goodchild. Mulaney is a First Nations system change expert who lives up in Canada. And I really tried hard as a layperson to like break down like how each one of us can practice systems change, right? This is creating the new earth is like systems change, how we can like figure that out, as non-systems change experts. And Turtle Island Institute is what Mulaney describes as a think and do tank, which I just love so much. Like we've done enough thinking. Thinking has gotten us here. And while we're all about, we've got to be in the woo-woo world, let's be, let's do less. Actually, we do have work to do. And so the Turtle Island Institute is, one, it's a teaching lodge. Mulaney passes down the wisdom of the elders through the Turtle Island Institute. This is one thing she has been tasked with by her elders, is to be a wisdom keeper and a wisdom transmitter, and she does that. Part of the Turtle Island Institute initiative is to really put Indigenous voices forward, and also to really embrace our relationship with nature and the land, especially as a healing, as a path towards healing collective trauma. There's something about that conversation with Mulaney that really lingers with me, and I've heard her in conversation before. Something to really consider for all of us. Like if you feel like, oh, I've had a really fine life, like I don't really have trauma, like, this isn't really a thing for me personally, I would invite you to consider the legacy that we have inherited, right? So what we saw in 2020, right? Clear vision, eyes opening, 2020 vision, was so much about how many systems were infiltrated with white supremacist, I don't want to say agendas, that's kind of maybe that's too strong a word, maybe it isn't, but how, and if you don't really want to talk about white supremacy, we can talk here in America about American exceptionalism. Well, isn't American exceptionalism really like white American exceptionalism? Like we don't really talk about multicultural American exceptionalism. And so we are living in a legacy of white supremacy, but also just break it down to something really elemental. The pilgrims that came to North America to settle this continent came with their traumas from the old world, right? The Anglos, the Europeans, they brought whatever, the famines, the religious persecution, whatever it was that was going on, that there was something bad going on that said, but let's risk everything, including your life and your family's life, to go to a new world that is completely unknown.
Right. These were not like, we think of them as being adventurers and up for an adventure. It was like, they weren't up for an adventure. They were running from something, right?
Yeah. They were trying to escape something. And so what was that? That was some kind of trauma, and they carried it here with them. And then, of course, then what happened with the indigenous people of North America? Trauma was inflicted. And so not only are Native Americans today carrying trauma, but we, as the descendants of those people, those pilgrims and settlers, we are carrying that collective trauma. And so part of what the Turtle Island Institute is working on is healing collective trauma, and doing it in a way that, as I said, like centers indigenous wisdom. Like, we've done a really great job of, building up an incredible nation in America, but we could use a little indigenous wisdom right now. And so I'm passionate about culture change. And, I just have to say that at one point in 2020, it was a pretty low point, and I can't remember what it was. It was like another Black man had been murdered way after George Floyd. And it was like, is anything going to change? Like, it was like, just stuff, just stuff was really chaotic and unfriendly and unhelpful. And I was lonely, and I was isolated, and I was, questioning everything. You probably got some Marco Polos from me around that time that were kind of gloomy. And then I saw an interview with Mulaney Goodchild, and I saw her talking about her work, and it inspired me, and it rekindled within me the hope that I needed to keep going and keep doing this sacred work. Because what we are doing, you, April, me, April, everyone on this series, is really sacred work.
And so I just want to, it sounds beautiful, and I'm looking forward to that interview. But I also want to kind of wrap this up. And so I have two more.
I know I could go on and on and on.
But, you were talking about what Mulaney's work does and how it helps with the collective trauma. And we, we talked about trauma in this interview as well. But I guess the question I had was, is that one of the things that these interviews do, that over the course of these 24 interviews, that you have conversations with people about how to look at that trauma within ourselves, and how to look at it and clear it and move forward? Is that
definitely
part of this?
It's definitely part of it. This is not a trauma series per se. We will touch on it depending on, who we're speaking with and what the topics are. I would say that, for me personally, I have a trauma-informed practice, which means that I believe if there's something going on in your life that you are deeply unsatisfied with, at the root of that is some sort of a trauma. And there's big T trauma, little t trauma. And many of my guests, will definitely be in agreement on that. But really, like, what we are talking about in this series is coming home to that authentic self. And how do we do that? And some of the key things that we're going to talk about, one is healing trauma. Another is nature connection. So many of the experts talked about nature connection. Another is talking about ritual and ceremony. And so there's all of these different ways that we can become in alignment with who we are here to be. And it's a multi-part, multi-step process. Yeah.
Awesome. And just one final question, if you'll humor me for one last little bit, is why do you care so much? Like, why? I know you've put incredible amount of work into cultivating this series. I know you pour your heart and soul into your work with your clients. Why?
Well, before you knew me, I will say that I know deeply what it is to suffer. That I spent most of my life in a deep state of emotional pain. And, at some point we just assume that that's what's available to us. oh, because this was my experience, this happened, da da da. And it wasn't until like right around when I turned 40 that, you know, spirit was finally like, are you freaking done yet? Are you done suffering? And I was like, no, I would like some more, please. Of course, I didn't realize I was saying this.
Right.
And I had a total adrenal burnout. And it was because I basically, you know, was living a toxic emotional experience. And which is not to say that I was in toxic relationships. I was in good relationships. By the grace of God, like I married like a really decent human being. Like
more than decent. Come
yeah.
on.
No, he's amazing. Yeah, he's totally amazing. But, you know, so it's not like I was, you know, bringing in all of this. This was within me. This was me reinforcing and rekindling self-loathing on a minute by minute basis. and what happens is that your body says, I can't do this anymore. Your body cannot live in that kind of toxicity. And that's what happened was my adrenals crapped out completely 100% done. And I thought it was a physical crisis, but it was a spiritual crisis masquerading as a physical one. And I really, really, really had to make that choice. Do I want to be right? Which is to say, I suffer because all these things happen to me. Therefore, I'm righteous. Therefore, I'm right. You know, or do I want to be happy? Do I want to have energy restored? Do I want to be able to sleep again? Ever? And, but mostly it was that emotional pain. Like, do I want to feel this for the rest of my life? I would rather die. Mm-hmm. And that was where I was at, was how can I get out of this arrangement of life without hurting? How can I do it cleanly without hurting people? And I couldn't figure out a way to do it. So thankfully I'm still here. But it was the darkest hour. It was actually a lot of hours.
A lot of hours.
So I do this work because, one, I know deeply what it is to suffer. And I also know from my own experience, and now working with so many incredible women who have carried, you know, who have worn the masks, who have dealt with perfectionism, who have been their worst critic, who have said the most hateful things to themselves that they would never say to anyone else, who have under-earned, who have underperformed, who have like under-experienced their lives. You do this work and everything changes, and you are able to create absolute magic in your life. And so I know that from personal experience, having done it. And so I know it is possible for everyone. And so this is a labor of love, this series. It's tremendous. But I do
hours and hours.
Yes, totally. And some sleepless nights, you know, before an interview that you're nervous about, and, you know, just, it's all out there. And if you're watching this, I just like want you to know the new earth is right here at our fingertips. And what you get out of it is absolutely everything that you want, whatever that is. If it's things on the material plane, you do this work and you'll get them. If it's deep, intimate, safe, nurturing relationships, do this work, you'll get it. If it's deep spiritual joy as opposed to occasional joy.
Right.
We have a private joke, everyone, about occasional joy. The deep spiritual joy, that's what you get when you do this work. And that's why I care so much, because we can't fix the problems in the world around us when we are wounded moving through the world at that level. And it's just not fun. So like, let's just have a little bit more fun.
Oh yeah, I'm all about that.
I know.
And when you mention that, it brings home this, you know, this little sticker that's next to light switches of, you know, think globally, act locally. Like I feel like that's so apt for this work, is that yes, you're considering the big picture, you're considering all of humanity, you're considering, you know, what we need to do and can do for our brothers and sisters and the planet. But you can't do it out there until you've acted locally, until you've done what you need to do right here, right now. And
Yep,
So you
that's
can
right.
think about it. Every time you turn off and on and off a
Mhm.
light switch, you can be reminded of what we're
Yep,
doing big and
that's
let
right.
it
Because it
let
all
it
starts from that local seed right there.
we'll see. Well, thank you, Anna, so much. This was a ton of fun for me, and I super appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you today. And I super appreciate the work that you're doing and all of the effort you put into this series. I'm just can't wait to start watching.
Oh, thank you, April. Thank you for spending time with me today. It always provides occasional joy when we get to spend time
I was
together.
just thinking that too. How do I work that in?
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the series, and I'll see you at one of those live ceremonies very soon. Take good care.